good afternoon. It's afternoon for all of us, I guess, uh, for this very, very interesting session that we have planned out here for the next 1 hour. It's on behavioral change and, more importantly, the role of films and education, entertainment, as we call it, in actually impacting behavioral change. And we have really got a fascinating, group of people here today who are going to take this topic ahead. So welcome to all of you who are joining in today. And just before we start, a few housekeeping announcements. This is going to be run in the webinar mode. But we will be, including all our participants in at a certain point where I'll give you the chance to interact, ask questions, etc. You have a chat button on the bottom panel. Please use the chat as much as you can to express opinions. If something resonates with what's being said, discuss, do write your opinion down. If you have specific questions, that would be really nice if you could put it in the Q&A option on the bottom panel. Yeah, so you can also direct your questions specifically to any one of our three wonderful guests here today. And the other thing, of course, basic Zoom, housekeeping, kind of tips. Please keep yourself muted at all times. If at all we want you to unmute, our facilitator will do that for you or ask you to do it. But it will help to reduce any background noise and eliminate any kind of disturbance, because we are in for a fantastic 1 hour of some very stimulating discussion. Without further ado, I think we can start the proceedings today. My name is Naresh, and I'm just here to play a very small but important role of introducing our three wonderful speakers on this discussion panel. Yeah. I'll start with Ravi Karmalkar. He is a director and producer based out of Berlin, Cologne, and Nairobi. And a brief history. After studying history of arts, Ravi gained more than 10 years experience as a creative assistant in various films, TV, and advertisements. Besides that, he directed several theater productions and trained approximately 150 actors in method and camera acting. Finally, he was able to bundle all these experiences in 1995 when he started his career as a journalist at the largest public broadcaster in Germany, Westdeutscher Rundfunk. I hope I pronounced it correctly, WDR, where he produced over 1,000 radio features on art, dance, film, and theater performances. From 2002, he worked for WDR as a TV writer and TV director. From 2006, he was increasingly entrusted with commissions for premium TV productions, that's between 60 and 90 minutes, for the largest national TV station, Das Erste. I don't think I've got that correct, but forgive me for that, seriously. And the second largest national TV station, ZDF. I'm glad you did not give me the full form of that. To date, he has written, directed, and produced more than 250 films in the range of 3 minutes to 90 minutes, for which he was awarded with Germany's 12 most important film awards and nominations in 15 years. Some of them are Selection German Camera Award 2004, German Business Film Award 2006, First Place Media Prize for SMEs 2009. I don't know where to stop, then the AWOTV Award for Investigative Film Journalism, nomination Golden Sparrow 2018, etc., etc. I mean, his profile is up on the Rise portal. Please check that out. So thank you, Ravi. Thank you for being here today with us. You're joining us from Nairobi today. Really happy to have you with us, and as yesterday. And I move next to our second speaker today, Uta Staschewski. Uta has been representing the Hans Seidel Foundation, HSF, in Tunisia, Libya, and Algeria for 1 year now. She has previously headed the Kenya and Ethiopia portfolio for 6 years and the HSF Namibia office for 2 years. She initiated civil society and political party cooperation and designed several innovative projects. She was previously assigned as a consultant at the HSF in Ghana, where she conceptualized and launched a project aimed at facilitating regional judicial dialogue to promote judicial exchange and cooperation in West Africa. Uta drives transformation in democratic governance, socio-political, and economic spaces. She designs, facilitates, and manages projects, intergroup processes, and networks. She builds strategic partnerships and sets up multidisciplinary teams for success. Uta graduated in law after her studies in Munich, Germany, and obtained a legal practitioner, that's the bar examination, in Munich, Germany. She has recently been certified as a coach. And I think today what she is going to bring to the table is her experience of using media and films as a medium for behavioral transformation. So welcome, Uta. It's wonderful to have you here. And Uta joins us today from Tunisia, right? And the third speaker is our very own Raja Krishna Menon, well known in India today, especially after his landmark movie Airlift. I don't need to say much about that. So he's, of course, an Indian film writer, director, and producer, but he started as an advertisement director and later moved on to feature films. Raja was born in Thrissur, Kerala, holds a Bachelor of Science degree with a chemistry major, but he moved to Mumbai in 1993 and worked in the ad films business, went independent in 1996, editing commercials and creating trailers for Bollywood films, shooting and creating trailers that were just not an edit of the film footage. So that's what he brought to the table. His early films included Raja Hindustani, Army, and Loafer. Menon then went on to advertisement commercials and has made over 300 commercials till date. In 2003, Raja wrote, directed, and produced his first feature film titled Bas Yun Hi, starring Purab Kohli and Nandita Das. He continued with advertising from 2003 to 2008. In 2009, he wrote, produced, and directed his second feature film, Bara Ana, starring Nasiruddin Shah, Vijay Raz, and Italian actress Violante Placido. The film was a critical success. Bara Ana was selected at international film festivals, including the Chicago International Film Festival. Post films, he continued to produce commercials and documentaries for some of the biggest agencies in India, and especially in partnership with Janani Ravichandran under the banner Bandra West Pictures. Menon's third film, Airlift, based on the government of India's evacuation of stranded Indians in Kuwait post Saddam Hussein's invasion, was released in 2016, starring Akshay Kumar and Nimrat Kaur in the lead. The film received critical acclaim and box office success. Post Airlift, Raja wrote, directed, and produced Chef, an official reworking of the acclaimed Jean Favreau film, and also produced a Netflix original film called Upstarts. Raja has completed work on an as yet untitled series for Amazon and is currently shooting a feature film, Pippa, based on the 1971 Bangladesh War. I think three amazing, amazing exponents of the art and people who are going to add a lot of value to this 1 hour of discussion. I don't want to hold anything back from the audience. It's over to you, Ravi. Please go right ahead and start. Thank you.
You're on mute, I think.
I was on mute, yes, therefore. Thank you, Naresh, and also thank you all the people from Rise World Summit to inviting us here. And I'm also very excited to meet here in this small circle of specialists. Very thankful for that, thanks. And yes, the topic of behavior change is quite an important one. When I arrived in Nairobi, it was 2014, I came to know a lot of representatives of NGOs, of UN, and you name it, because there are quite a lot of organizations here. So what I could already make out is, or was that behavior change is quite a big topic in the development sector. And a few years later, I found some researches on that behavior change in film or behavior change in radio, for instance, can be very well combined. So I went into these studies and checked on it, and it was really amazing what I could find. But I also was asking myself, why are there not more behavior change films or behavior change dramas on the table? So just to give you some figures, some of my research, there were a lot of TV films or TV series or radio dramas produced in the last 3 decades. Maybe to give you just 2 examples, in Mexico, how powerful behavior change dramas can be. So there was one show in Mexico, which was conceived as a telenovela called Ven Conmigo, Come With Me. And it was aired for around about a year. And it was dealing about the literacy of people in Mexico. So after they have aired it, Ven Conmigo had an influence of leading to the enrollment about 1 million illiterates in adult education classes, which was an increase of 63% over the previous year. So this was the effect of a behavior change fiction drama on people in Mexico. And I think the newest example here is a TV series called Sugar. It's a behavior change TV series, which was focusing the issues of HIV and other sexual diseases. So the World Bank did a studies on that. And may I just quote, takes me 30 to 40 seconds, please follow me, and then we can open the discussion. So the psychologists are checking on the outcome or the impact of this series called Sugar. They found out, quote, we conducted a randomized control trial in urban Nigeria where young viewers were exposed to MTV Sugar or to a placebo TV series. We find significant improvements in knowledge and attitudes towards HIV and risky sexual behavior. Treated subjects are twice as likely to get tested for HIV 8 months after the intervention, or meaning like after looking the TV series. We also find reduction in STDs among women. These effects are stronger for viewers who report being more involved with a narrative consistent with the psychological underpinnings of edutainment. The individual effect of edutainment seems to have prevailed in the context of our study. So again, these are two scientific proofs that edutainment or behavior change fiction can work very, very well. And I leave it now also for my colleagues to maybe comment on that. Maybe a last thought, and I think Raja might also take this into consideration. We are filmmakers, right? So film in its different genres has its own rules, but behavior change fiction has different rules. On the one hand, it applies rules from ordinary storytelling you have to respect, but on the other hand, behavior change fiction also includes knowing the facts and translating the facts and the statistics into a narrative, into compelling characters. So that's also something I think we should point out today. It's not only about producing a film or a radio drama, it's about producing something very special which feeds the needs of the development sector. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Uta, would you like to go ahead and react? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity and for that kind introduction. Also, Naresh, feeling at home here, having lived in India also for a year, I feel very much at home. That was a long time back. So thank you for the invitation. Perhaps from my perspective, perhaps to contextualize things. I'm working for a development organization. So for us, it's important to identify and to support positive change. And that goes down to changing behaviors. So for me, it's actually important to have a good picture of what's actually going on the ground. So that's the first thing. So the hypothesis I have is, if you put a mirror in front of a society or in front of a human being, in front of people, they interact with it. So there's an opportunity for the system to see itself. And there's an opportunity, when the system sees itself, there's an opportunity for seeing one's own behavior and seeing opportunities to shift that behavior, actually. So that's actually the hypothesis. And a film is, for me, is a tool to navigate through that. From my experience, after working 10 years in the development sector, we cannot initiate change unless we have a critical mass. Usually the change is already occurring, but it's not distributed evenly. So what we do is we identify leverage points, we identify scenarios where change has already occurred, and then we sort of redistribute it so that it reaches a critical mass. So there comes behavior change drama in. For me, it's what is important, or what's actually the key point why this is such a valuable tool. And I'm quoting a friend of mine here, because there's no wagging finger. Because the organization I'm working for, we're doing political education, consultation, political dialogue. So in order to sort of avoid that, now I need to be careful with formulating that neo-colonial sort of notion of knowing everything and teaching people, what we think is right. We need to avoid sort of coming across as trying to make them believe something, that doesn't fit the context. So for me, the first and most important step is actually to get a clear picture of the problem. And that's also something Ravi helped us with. That was actually part of writing the script. We basically collected first quantitative and then qualitative data, and we put it into sort of like, we had a database of stories and facts, and based on these stories and facts, Ravi then created, with the help of our local team, a narrative. And I find that really on that stage, we're still just at the stage of formulating what is the problem actually, what's the issue on the ground. And in our case, it was like a whole bouquet of gender issues. So without having sort of imposing anything, we created a story, like a picture of the reality on the ground, that had this storytelling narrative, I found, and that was valuable for us to actually work with, as well as valuable for the target group to already see itself. So that was the first stage. And then for me, then fast forward, creating that piece of art, and then broadcasting it to the critical masses, gives them then again in a second step the opportunity to interact with it. And again, I'm repeating myself, without a wagging finger. There's no pointing out of mistakes or anything like that. It's just a simple narrative. It's just a simple story of the situation. It's quite exciting, actually. And what I learned from that is, I know that might not be so important, but the clearer the story is reflected, the clearer the story reflects the reality on the ground, the better the intervention actually. So that was really amazing, I found. Even the process itself already, because what we struggle with also with our problem formulation is that we see this out of context, right? So we see we feel that our problem analysis, even if I commission a baseline study and I have someone who's putting together facts, he's still kind of writing for me, right? Not for the people. So for me, that story it was just an amazing a source of what's going on the ground actually in reality.
Yeah, thank you, Uta. Just for the listeners or viewers outside, we started behavior change fiction drama, which turned out to be a radio drama 2.5 years ago. So we focused on gender inequality in Kenya. We checked on the facts, on the statistics, and translated it into characters who then go on a journey in the film. So just to give you an example, like a great number of girls before they are 20 get raped in Kenya. I think it was around about 30% of them experienced raping. So we built a character who goes through it, but also tries to solve this for once and forever. Women in universities, I think the figure was around about 15%, only 85% boys. So what is the reason? So we created a character out of it who tries really to fight for the rights of women. Or a lot of women, when they get pregnant, are left alone to a very great number. I think it's like 60-70% of them raise their children on their own. The men disappear. And so also we created a character out of this, like a woman who has the same issue, but tries to solve it in a very dramatic way, and so on and so on. So this turned out to be the radio drama called The Bet, and this worked very well. We'll come back to it later, I would say. Also, we could come back later. Uta, is also, yes, the work of in the development sector. Yeah, could it be an advantage for the development sector to think of producing more behavior change fiction in the future? Yes or no? We can come back to that. Raja, also, I'm very interested also in your experience with behavior change or behavior change fiction. Could you just give us your thoughts, kindly?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here, the Rise Summit, and all of you. It's wonderful to meet you, Ravi and Yuta. You guys are doing very serious, incredible change work. I'm not in that place. I make movies and documentaries, and I've noticed that I'm going to just talk about the power of actually storytelling is something that to me is what differentiates us really, and our ability to talk to a mass audience, and I think that one of the great advantages that cinema has is that people who come to it are coming to watch something, as against being put in a room and forced to kind of consume something. So I feel already that a lot of people who are coming in with the mindset. It's a manipulative medium in the end, and it's a point of view that we're putting forward to somebody. But people are ready they've come in with the idea of accepting at least to watch or to listen or to hear what you're saying. So you're already in an advantage there. I think we're already talking, like you said, talking to when change is already happening, and you're talking to people that are interested in that. And I find that the little things are subtle change works strongest somehow. It's in the commercial world. Again, this may sound a bit frivolous, but it's in an Indian context. It's a simple thing about like gender, for instance, and it's what does the woman drink in a party. It's as stupid as that. I have this experience. I was shooting a commercial film, and the scene was a single parent and her friends having a conversation. This was set in Kerala, and my assistant was giving everybody a glass, and he gave all the women wine and he gave all the men whiskey. And I was like, why didn't you give the women whiskey? And he was like, actually, I don't know why I didn't do that. So it's a little thing, and so of course we did that, but and I think then you see more and more of this, and then that becomes acceptable. I'm talking about a very minute little change that people, it becomes acceptable to people, and suddenly you stop questioning. So that's I think the kind of really subtle changes that happen. And then of course there are bigger changes on especially in India. The gender equation, I mean, both of you have experience in India. Is my, like you said, you were here for a year, and I'm guessing Ravi has enough connections here to understand how it goes. And I think largely commercial cinema can play that big part in changing, because it has an audience that's willing to come in to be entertained, and they're not coming in to change. They're coming in to see something, and it kind of subtly goes in. Also, just the whole idea of being entertained as you learn something from that, I think is an integral part. and which is what I think even the radio play you're talking about sounds very exciting to me when I think about how you constructed. But in reality, commercial cinema is constructed in exactly the same way. You have the data, whether it's researched in the same process or not, I'm not too sure. I think you guys have data points and you do it much better than us. But we are also looking at what's happening in the world, especially the cinema that I make. I don't mean all cinema, but in the sense that we are talking about the reality of setting it in a certain reality and then finding ways to deal with those situations in a bigger place. And I find that there is a tremendous responsibility on filmmakers, because people do take us more seriously than we think. They do watch, they do change, and I find that I've come across a lot of personal interactions with people, and how they see the world once they watch a film. A film that I made in 10 years ago, 12 years ago, called Barana, was really about the unseen people in Bombay, the watchman, the waiter, and it was about dignity. And I was really surprised by how many people got the subtle dignity that I was trying to talk about. But it's a crime thriller, actually, in the sense it's about three people who go out and end up in crime. But there were a lot of people who suddenly said, "Oh, you know what? Okay, the driver is a person, is a human being, and I can now relate to that person." So it's subtle. It takes time, like all change does. But I think that if you can bring in some kind of like a marriage of what you were speaking about earlier, and what my world does, I think the impact of it can be really, really tremendous. Where if we can get, a big commercial film that's seen as a commercial film, but also just talks about something that's important, it's so much easier for people to digest that somehow. So I think that's the space that would be very exciting to kind of try and find, find that space, actually, really.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you're pointing out a really important thing. It's, the subtlety and the fact that there's no visible agenda. Obviously, we as a development organization, we always struggle with this, because we always, it's always perceived that we have an agenda. So when we convey information and an agenda is visible, there's immediately resistance. I mean, you can feel this on yourself. If somebody wants something from you, or wants you to change or whatever, it's like, no, I'm not consuming this, I'm not watching this, etc. But if the agenda is sort of taken out of the equation, and if it's just like a realistic picture, and that's also, maybe that wasn't really clear, that's also something we're struggling with as a sort of international organization, to get a realistic picture of the realities on the ground. And if you get that with the help of people and artists like you, if you manage to put that together, that can be really powerful. And there's no agenda needed, actually. It's actually just a mirror put in front of the people, and the rest happens on its own, I feel. So that's actually, I think it's what you're also describing, it's really happening on a subconscious level. I'm not a psychologist, but we connect with small, subtle things, and we draw our own conclusions. And I think in order to reach the subconscious, we need to have the agenda out of the equation and really work with subtle things that, people can connect with. That's really powerful.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Uta, let me just come back to Raja. Thank you also pointing out for film, for how film can influence also, or manipulate or convince people there in the audience because of the compelling or convincing characters. May I just also underline that film always was used also as a tool to manipulate or to influence people right from the beginning. Already in World War I, it was used from the different war parties in cinemas in order to create a certain, let's say, atmosphere and aggression in order to get more young men into the army. Second World War even more. So you have a lot of examples there how film as such can work already. And Then also, if you just check on the feature film side, if I stay with the topic of war, there was something, a film in called again, I think was, yeah, All Quiet on the Western Front. This was a movie which was forbidden then by Hitler and the Nazis, because it had the opposite effect, that people suddenly were questioning the reason or the sense or the ethics of going to war. You had a film like Hair in the Western sphere was very important, promoting this attitude of hippies towards the Vietnam War and so on, also caused a lot of effect on people then refusing to go to the US Army, for instance, and so on. So you can see already with those examples that film can be a very powerful tool at reaching the masses, and also conducting or trying to get a development or a change or a behavior change done there, out there with your audience. This is something I think we have to consider. If we are talking about behavior change fiction, these are, let's say, psychological mechanisms we have to implement in the work if we are producing a behavior change fiction. Yes, we know it works, and how to work with the tools in order to achieve a development goal. But let me ask you, Uta, just in this case, because yes, you are in the development sector now for a very long time, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the work of for NGOs, political foundation, government agency, UN, and you name them, is all about, normally it's all about change, development, and change or behavior change. But still, in most of the cases, this work takes place in small communities, closed shops. So I think you were also mentioning the efficiency, right? So how many people are you reaching out there? How much development can you implement with this kind of work, which normally takes place? It's always small, specialist, small groups. So why do you think this is so? Can you try to find an explanation?
Thanks, Ravi. I mean, it's an amazing accelerator, right? If implemented responsibly and respectfully, ethically, and diligently, because it's also a big responsibility, right? We have put our stamp on it. We obviously, I can only speak for my organization, but we only want to support. I said it before, I don't think we can really cause change, but we can sort of accelerate change that has already been taking place. So for that, we need to identify it correctly. So, but if we have identified that correctly, even with the help of and formulated the problem correctly and put it into that amazing tool, that script, I think that in itself is already an amazing tool because it tells a story of a problem in its context. And that's also something we don't always do well, actually, in our sector. To tell that story in its context correctly. Because when I write a report or problem analysis, it's me who's writing it. It's not a Tunisian, it's not a Kenyan, it's not an Indian. I can only write something that's coming from my perspective. And I feel the film script in itself adds on so many different perspectives because it's the result, it's the product of such an amazing and important process of actually like a grounded research that has been done before that. So that in itself is already like an amazing product. So if we then have the opportunity together with the target group to develop that further and then broadcast that, I mean, that would be an ideal tool to put out with the respective caution, right?
Yeah.
Does this answer your question, Ravi?
I think what I mean, just to sorry to jump in here, but just very quick. You're muted, Ravi, again. I think I could choose. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, kind of gone.
No. So I just said that, I worked on a few campaigns here when we tried to work on open defecation, stuff like that. And the route that we kind of went down was really kind of, first of all, to be able to show people a perspective outside of themselves. So what happens? It's also very hard sometimes to see yourself in that. It's almost like a eureka moment and think, oh my God, that could be me. And so we got a movie star, a very popular actor, Vidya Balan, to play this character. But we set it in a village, and we spoke about. We made 5 or 6 of these things, and then and I think it was played all over television and other sources like this. And what it did actually, and I don't really know, because we don't really know, we don't get the numbers and how it's impacted people. But what I gathered is at least that there's the greatest was that they started a conversation, at least about open defecation. I mean, because that was not even considered an issue to most of these villages. I mean, so that was our problem. It wasn't theirs. So I think there are 2 ways in which these communications worked. I did a documentary with the Gates Foundation on the HIV problem in Andhra Pradesh, and it was very fascinating. It became actually a women empowerment documentary somehow. At some point, it changed. We went out to talk to women prostitutes and people like that who were living, sex workers who were living off truck drive, horrible lives, really. And some point, it became a women empowerment story. And it was fascinating for me to see these, how we sit here, and at least I'm sitting down in the city and deciding that these are the problems and not really understanding. So I think that is a very important aspect of what cinema can do, is to actually at least point out what on the ground the problem is for them. So sex work was not the problem for these women. The problem was much bigger than that. That was one element of their lives. And in fact, that was actually empowering them to be able to do other stuff. So it was a very interesting take on it. And I think that aspect is something that only the audiovisual art can do. Because when I see someone and I can relate to it, and then I can look at them from an outside perspective and kind of watch this happen, and then at some point realize, can say, oh my God, that could be me, and now I can take some charge. So that was one interesting aspect, I thought, when we talk about change, of not, like you were saying, of not having the agenda. I think that not having the agenda is what makes it work.
Yes. May I just try some game here? So now, Raja, me, filmmaker, Uta on the development side. So just imagine Uta would bring forward, let's say, a topic to Raja. What could this be, and how would Raja translate it into a behavior change fiction project? Kindly, Uta. Kindly, Uta, unmute your microphone. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking hardly now. I mean, democracy here in Tunisia, I mean, that's also, since, I don't know whether you've been following, but since 25th of July last year, we've been making steps back. We've always been, I think there's always been making steps forward here, but I feel here, and when I ask people, what's democracy? They usually say, well, the economy has to work. So the connection between, democracy meaning functioning institutions is not being made. When I ask people here, democracy means a functioning economy. So there's this, a disconnect. So how would you deal with this, this narrative?
Okay, but this is already okay. So now it's up to Raja to.
Difficult. The economy is on autopilot here, and it's been difficult.
Yes. So Yes, Raja, you have 2 minutes to produce a film now.
Yeah, no. Actually, I think that anything that's an all-encompassing environmental situation is actually the easiest to work with. Because I can set any story. I can set a story of if it were India, and I set a story of a family, and what happens to them given either economically or institutionally, if democracy doesn't survive or does survive, or you are in a dictatorship, or all of these questions. Because the environment is actually the easiest part for a filmmaker. And the environment then allows me. I'm looking for conflict as a commercial filmmaker, and I keep using the word commercial, although I'm not really sure what that means. But when I make feature-length films and I'm writing stories, I'm always taking it from the environment. I see the way that my building's watchman is treated, and that tells me something, and that's the story. I mean. Or I'm sitting at a friend's house who's drinking an expensive single malt, and the house help is bringing this thing out in this beautiful cut glass, and I'm thinking, hey, what is he thinking? At what point is he going to take that bottle and break it over my head? Because he makes less money in the year than I'm drinking that night. So environments are actually easier to create. And easier then, because environments will give me the conflict. So I think that's not that hard. It just depends on what, again, the agenda is. So because it's manipulated.
May I just say, this is a perfect example, I think, also for our viewers outside, how a dialogue between, for instance, a development organization and a filmmaker creative could be. Like, you have on the one hand, on either side, like a topic and also a goal to enhance a democracy, and then you have the filmmaker translating it into an environment and also trying to tell this story and the democracy topic over compelling characters, and of course the issues they have to overcome. If it comes to whiskey, you could also add a scene where a politician just gives out a lot of whiskey to influence the votes, for instance. Like in Kenya, they are really, this is no joke, in Kenya politicians are really giving out money to people, literally, vote for me, money, vote for me, money, and so on. What a scene,
Exactly.
But anyway, may I just
let me add quickly, Ravi, maybe I can just a quick one, just a quick intersection. What Raja has done just now is actually, I've given him an abstract problem out of context, and his approach is an empathizing approach. So he's searching for a story on the ground. So I'm giving him an abstract problem here. From my perspective as a development organization, and he's empathizing, he's trying to contextualize the problem by giving me stories that basically define the problem in a completely different way. See, my definition was, well, there's a disconnect between the understanding of democracy and economic development, very technical. So his approach is now, okay, what is the story here? What's the story behind that? And what are the potential like mini narratives I can use to present the story? And that's the key thing for me here, actually.
I would say, Utan, thank you. I think this was a behavior change production in a nutshell. So I think this is how this could be the first discussion, but then of course we also have to say, then after this it's a long way. It takes months of producing a script which is really fitting into the goals, and on the other hand also is artistically well done. This is also something which should also be respected, because you only get the masses out there, and you only can, convince the audience out there if it is artistically well done. But anyway, let me just refer to Naresh and the people of Rise World Summit again, also respecting Uta's itinerary. So we have 9:45, and so I've learned that there is a big meeting coming up on your side, Uta. Naresh and his team also has to respect the itinerary. So for me, I think this was maybe this was a really, really super discussion, and I would like to continue this, whether it's on the panel or on a private level. So maybe also,
Yes, very
maybe
exciting.
anyway, but maybe Raja, you also
Please.
can also talk just
Absolutely.
on a basis. I'm very interested in what you're doing. Thank you.
No, thank you. Lovely.
So much. Yeah, we have questions.
We have a few questions, so I think.
Oh,
yeah, that's good. And yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating. And I think, the way you did this, I think you could have a workshop on this when you put everybody on the spot, right? We're throwing a situation out at you, create a film out of it.
Ravi threw us all under the bus at one point. So.
Very slyly did that. Beautiful. So yeah, so Ashwini, how are we going to do this? We got a question on the Q&A. We all got a couple of questions. Avi, I think Deepali has a question. Let's go with her. Anupama has a question. If you could highlight them. And everybody and all those who are in the audience, please put up your questions. We'd love to take it. We got about a few minutes more where you can address those. Yeah, Deepali,
I'll actually let Deepali go. By the time I'll invite all the other participants into the panel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Deepali, go ahead. Shoot.
Yes, this is out of fascination for the movies and all the things. Okay, maybe you can consider me a viewer first, that I'm watching a documentary and I love watching documentaries. There are two things. There are two parts that I want to ask. One is directed towards Raja and one is open. So whoever wants to answer. So for Raja, the first question is, as you're in advertising, you have advertising and you know that documentary has, till today, we don't have mass people who come and watch that documentary. The question is, like, people have less span now. They have a retention span is less. Though we are in now 2 years, we are in pandemic and having this online, people are bored little bit. So what do you think? Can advertisement, maybe not advertisement, but maybe a 1 or 2 minutes films can change this particular thing in the behavioral modification? Because it plays a lot of with the psychology of the people when we talk about only 2-minute length film, but a lot of work we have to do to make that 2 minutes effective. That is first. The second is,
let's take this one at a time.
Okay.
Make the question short, please. We'll try to.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deepali. I mean, thank you so much, Deepali. I think to be honest, I think documentaries are being viewed more and more. Unfortunately, they're becoming structurally more like fictional dramas. Netflix does a lot of them. They all look the same to me, but they still do get the message across, and people are slowly being drawn into one kind of documentary filmmaking. So that is good at a certain level. I'm going to jump into the second part of it, which is, does 2-minute cinema work? It does work, but it really character. Ravi talked a lot about building characters. That's not easy in a 2-minute, 1-minute piece. So it depends on what you're talking about. And if it's something particular that you want to say, then it can work. But I still think 2 minutes is a bit too short. I would still, I think compelling 5 minutes, it depends on how compelling it is to the person viewing it. So length really depends on how the story is being told. If it's interestingly told and you're held to it, I don't think it would matter if it's 5 or 6 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raja. Deepali, a quick question, the second one, or should we go to someone else?
No, you can take Anupama's because it's waiting. Should I read it out or you will do that?
Anupama, are you there? Do you want to read this? Or I'll just.
So I just noticed she isn't here, so maybe you can read it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to short. This question is, I think this is mainly to do with India. So Raja, perhaps you can again. The whole idea is, the question is dealing with sensitizing pockets and groups in the film industry with regard to issues that plague us as a society. And is there any impetus provided to them so they can maybe see beyond the box office? So there are two aspects to this question. One is, like, first of all, are filmmakers really exposed to social realities enough to kind of import that into their storylines? And secondly, is there any incentive for them to look even beyond box office?
I think, yes. Fortunately, I can answer both those questions a bit more positively than I could a few years ago. What's happened is that the whole digital revolution has actually opened up filmmaking and made it far more accessible to people. So there are a lot of young filmmakers coming out of all over the country telling stories that are close to them, because and they are part of this reality. So some wonderful films in Marathi, Malayalam, Bengali, in Bangladesh that are coming out about the reality of what's going on. Is there an incentive beyond the box office? OTT has changed the way people are looking at cinema, because we are consuming all kinds of cinema. Now the gatekeepers to the gatekeeping to releasing a film in the box office is really the marketing cost of reaching people and the ability to put it out in theater. So that has gone away. Now what you have is you have a shelf life of a film, because it sits on an OTT platform for however long you want it. You could see it today, you could see it a year from now, you could find it. AI is finding ways to show it from good, bad, ugly, but there is a lot of push for cinema that anybody will watch. We must understand that anyone in the commercial art, the gatekeeper needs to believe that there's a reason for this film to be out there and that people will watch it. If that's there, then yes, there's a lot of scope.
Awesome. Ashwini, you have a question.
Yeah, this question actually is to either on Uta, maybe the better person to answer. Just wanted to check, what can we as lay men or common woman, man do to kind of promote some of these movies, or what can we do to get the real stories out? That was one of the questions.
Who's we? Just a quick one,
we as in non-directors, non-movie people. Yeah.
Okay, good. I think great. It's a great question. Thank you. What we did actually, we brought the two together. We brought people who have a story to tell together with people who have the knowledge and the capacity to actually transform what they have to say into a compelling story. There's also an aspect I've not mentioned. Ravi has also trained Kenyans, like several Kenyans, in storytelling. The whole process of writing that script was actually an educational process. So Ravi taught them how to write a script. He was the one who did all the quality control. And we actually facilitated the process. So perhaps to answer the question, one aspect could be more people to facilitate that interaction between filmmakers and people who have a story to tell.
Sure. So all of us get trained actually to do good storytelling, is what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay.
Uta, if you don't mind, I got a question here. You coming from the kind of position of the client in a way, a developmental organization, and many of us are from that field. One barrier that comes in the mind of any NGO. I think everybody's more or less convinced about the power of film to get a point across, to create that change. But one big barrier which comes across every time for them to even start considering it is the cost. The better the filmmaker. For me, I know, Raja is a friend, and I'm sure he'll be very kind to me. But in case someone has to approach someone like a Raja to make a film, there is a cost involved, because the quality of the person is something which you're going to be paying for. It's going to cost, you're going to get dividends, but the cost itself is. So how does one approach it? What's the via media that you could find? Ravi, you got something to say as well. Yeah.
May I just answer this question? Of course, as Raja might know even better, but of course we filmmakers always are looking at the budget. Even if it's low budget, it's a lot of money. And I think this is also conflict then if you check on the development side. Sometimes people then are shocked, saying like, what? This comes along with costs of about what, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. But then the next step would be saying, yes, it is costly, but yes, you will reach let's say 100%, no, 1,000, 2,000% more people out there. So now if you include this thought into the cost, suddenly these costs seem to be okay, I think. But this is something which I was mentioning also before, and in between, that in the development sector, you have a lot of people, they are working on small budgets, facilitating small, coming togethers, inviting a professor here, professor those, and so meeting with 20 people and so on. So what is the impact of that? This is something I think also in the development sector, this question will be raised in the next year more and more, because mostly this is also financed by taxpayers' money. So then, of course, the questions are coming up. So, so what are you doing with our money? What is the real impact of this, and so on? So then I think maybe for people like Raja and me, also golden era will come up. That you know, the development sector recognizes more and more that it really makes sense also to go for behavior change fiction. But may I take this as my final words, because my watch shows me it's 9:56 in
Yes.
Germany, 11:56 in
We have
Kenya.
a fascinating session after
I would
this.
like to answer, if you don't mind. I have
Yeah,
a couple
sure,
of
go ahead.
minutes, if you don't mind, Ravi.
No,
Maybe
of course not.
also for you as filmmakers to approach us. We usually only see the product and we see the price. We don't always see the potential of the process. What I was trying to describe to you is that the process itself, the creation process in itself, has value already. And I think this needs to be communicated, that the creation of the narrative, of the script, has in itself already value. And I think we don't always see that value that the process has. We always just see the product. And perhaps that's one point that could be emphasized, that we say, tell us what other values you could bring to the table. For instance, you have, I don't know how many young people trained on writing a narrative and on working with the ethics of filmmaking, for instance. That's something that has value. On another note, we always, like, especially we in the development sector, we kind of shy away from profit-making organizations because that's kind of, you know, it feels kind of dirty and all that. But that's also a narrative that's shifting because, you know, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right? So it's so we always need to appreciate also that, you know, what has value has its price. And I feel, especially in the art sector, we need to appreciate that, you know, this is what you live from. And you need to sort of make a margin here. But I think it's you know, that's coming out more and more. You know, it's the two things. It's not just the end product that has value, but the process in itself.
Absolutely.
As well as sort of arguing the notion that this has in itself a value.
Thank you, Uta. I think that's really a perspective. I think this balance that you spoke about, and I think that's changing a lot. And I think even the corporate sector is looking at supporting this kind of initiative to see the impact. So we must, unfortunately, I mean, it's been a fascinating discussion. I mean, it's been amazing to have the three of you bring in such diverse viewpoints. And, you know, I think, you know, another hour would have been even, I think, less to take this on. You know, your histories and your work, your body of work is so exciting and fascinating. We will take this conversation ahead. I'm sure Rise will want to do this even some other time as well. Thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you so much, Raja. And thank you, Uta. You came in from 3 different parts of the world and you have joined in here and you provided immense value. So thank you once again.